Okay, so if you're in a place where you're held over a barrel, this first came in the 1973 oil embargo of OPEC versus the United States and its allies. Basically, OPEC decided to stop selling oil to these places, and these places didn't have enough domestic production to supply their needs. And it was one of the primary reasons why in these countries they developed their own oil production, because they never wanted to be held hostage again to a foreign power who was clearly unfriendly. Strangely, these nations, led by Saudi Arabia, are despicable in the way that they treat people. Again, read about in Saudi Arabia young men under 25 being assassinated by the sword, beheading. And yet these countries are kowtowed to. That's a Chinese term. Kowtowing is bowed to by U.S. president after U.S. president. It's something fishy, something very fishy. But if you're held over a barrel, what should you do? Well, you should have a lot of backup plans, because you never know when anyone is going to turn on you, especially in this world where everything is about greed and profit. So, how do you get around these supply problems? Um, you could move out of the areas that have got supply problems. Difficult, because if you're in a long-term lease with your business office and your apartment, or if you've got to sell something you own, it's a pain in the neck. Other ways you can survive a supply crisis. Well, in 1973, they did some rationing. You ration what you've got and make people line up at the pumps, which creates traffic jams. People with foresight, if they saw they were going to be getting into a battle over pipelines, they would have built themselves a terminal where they could take offshore shipments of refined gasoline and diesel easily into a tank, large tank farm, and then from there distribute the petroleum products by tanker truck. It wouldn't be too big of a construction job. I know things are slow. If it was wartime, you could have it built in one summer, but it seems like things take forever when it's not officially wartime. So, give it a few years, you could build something like that. And given that these pipeline wars have been going on for 10 years between British Columbia and Alberta, British Columbia should have built a oil port where they could take gasoline from. There's all kinds of refineries around the world that you can buy gasoline from, and there are oil tankers that will bring it right to you. So with a bit of foresight, the people in lower mainland British Columbia would not have any kind of supply problem. The National Post says that there are refineries in the United States that have got capacity to service the lower mainland by tanker truck. So, I mean, that could be done. It always seemed like there was tight supply in the lower mainland and Washington state. When I was in the oil business, my superiors told me it was by design. They didn't want, the oil industry itself did not want to build new refineries. They wanted to close the ones that they had because they weren't profitable enough. And it was fairly easy to ramp up production on an existing refinery, although they probably never would tell you publicly, but they can ramp up production on existing refineries. And basically they wanted to reduce the number of refineries because they wanted to decrease competition so they could raise prices. So any supply shortages that you see anywhere are by design. It is not about servicing the public, it is about profits. Capitalism, as I say time and again, is the bane of humanity because it is nothing to do with serving humanity. It is all about serving the owners who want more profits so they can buy more stuff for themselves. And there's no doubt that the politicians that are elected are among the stupidest people, intellectual midgets. I'm sorry if you're a midget, but intellectual midgets who have no forethought. And it's true that people who are tree huggers and Greenpeace kind of people are incredibly stupid people, because anybody in Alberta will tell you it's the people who are all so pro going green are so ignorant to the world that they live in. They think that they have to take it on the chin. In other words, carbon taxes and unbelievable regulations to protect the environment, and yet they're just completely ignorant that huge countries like China and Pakistan and the United States have got enormous coal-fired power plants that are still going to pollute, regardless of your attempt to go green in your little small 1.5 million city-state. So all you're doing is you're punishing the poor people in your own neighborhood by these ridiculous carbon taxes, and then getting into pissing matches with, the neighboring province, Alberta. And who pays in the end? It's the poor people who have no other way to get around. It's people who live beyond the Portman Bridge in Surrey or Langley because they can't afford to live in Vancouver, but they have to work there and they have to commute. And I guess you can always take the train that takes forever to get anywhere. But this is the state of Vancouver. The people are incredibly stupid people, and so they are suffering from $1.70 a liter at the gas pump, and they wonder why. And it is because they are too stupid to understand the world that they're living in. So that is the pain of paying, and it does fall on the poor people. And these poor people generally are they aware of all these things? Some of them are, but who votes in these NDP governments and these Green Party governments? Do-gooders. They want to do something good for the planet, and they think, well, we'll start here at home. And the old idea was think globally, act locally. So they're acting locally, but it's not like you're going to go and become green in your little city-state, and the rest of the world, like China, are going to follow you. They're not. So it's plain stupidity. It's plain stupidity. You're not going to make any difference in the environment on planet Earth. You're not going to go and set an example and have a bully pulpit and tell China, now it's time for you to close down your coal-fired power plants, or Pakistan, or the United States. They're not going to do it. So you have just crippled yourself, and what's the benefit? You haven't changed the fact that these enormous countries are still polluting. You've just punished, the rich people in Vancouver don't care. They'll pay extra at the pump. It's nothing for them. But for the working people in Vancouver, they're the ones that have to pay extra, and there's a hassle of it all, because it's these environmentalist people who are just incredibly stupid. Now, given that, I do agree that cutting down forests on the side of mountains that will never regrow are an environmental nightmare and wrong. But as long as who is it that knows how to eliminate fossil fuel? It's hidden from us. Is it possible to live without fossil fuel? Well, you can go electric, and I read recently that in Germany, where they make electric cars, because Germany is still using fossil fuels, coal-fired plants, that these electric cars cost a lot to make in emissions. I always thought that Germany had gone green, but according to this article, they still have coal-fired plants that makes electricity that perhaps is being used to make steel or something. So there's a lot of fossil fuel that is wasted in making these battery-operated cars. So they said over the lifetime of these electric cars made in Germany, there is no saving in CO2. So where are all these other technologies that you can use? They're buried. Are they real? Last summer I saw a spacecraft. It's one of those triangular shaped spacecraft, TR-3B Aurora Astras, that are supposed to be anti-gravity planes, spacecraft. And I don't know if they still use fuel or if they're using some other technology. So even though you hear about these over Unity devices that are using 0-point energy, if they're real, I haven't seen one. If they're not real, then we can have to continue to use what we got. And whatever we do in a small city-state like Vancouver is not going to make any difference. So let's protect the trees. And I know we have to use pipelines to bring Alberta product in, as long as these patents for these other kinds of technologies are buried. So I'm sorry, you're going to have to go and allow the pipelines through and try and protect the forests. It's a hell of a thing. But, let this be a lesson to you. Don't let stupid people rule you. And how does stupid people rule you? At the ballot box. It's very easy to get a whole pile of stupid people voting one way because they're caught up in their emotions. I'm laughing because I told someone who was running for Senate in the United States that they were saying, well, there's too many people that are touchy-feely. And I said, well, you should go with your gut feeling. And then the response was, you still need your facts. I have a hard time disputing the fact that you need both your thinking cap and your feeling gut. Using one or the other leads to problems, so that's why you've got them both. What other solutions are you going to have? more mass transit, better mass transit. Um, Stop the immigration to your little city-state in Vancouver. It's already too jammed as it is. Um, Open immigration to a little tiny place only leads to higher real estate prices, and the people that are born and raised in the city-state cannot live in it because of the foreign influx. So, you know, in theory, I believe in free borders and people being able to travel where they want, but in practice, if they're all coming to where you are, and you're not allowed to go to where they're coming from, well, I'm thinking, am I allowed to go to China and work there? Um, no. It's not just the language, um, but primarily the language. I can't learn Cantonese or Mandarin. I tried to learn French when I was young, when you're more likely to be able to pick up a language, and I botch it. I really can't speak French. So, um, going to China to only speak English, I guess you could teach English as a second language or something, but in essence, no. You cannot go to China where all this money comes from, and um, letting them come in, it sounds racist, but it's not. It's, a country of 1 billion versus a country of 30 million. Um, that's an incredible difference in numbers. And to flood your country with immigrants is stupid. It's stupid because it penalizes the people that are already in your country. It ruins the laws of economics. Your wages will never go up while your prices go up because they keep bringing more and more immigrants to work the low-paid jobs. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare, and I know it sounds racist, but if I was in charge, I would not have all this immigration. I would cut it off. We've got way too many people already in Canada because they all end up in our big cities that are already too expensive for people to live in. So, I mean, people look at the map and they say it's a huge country. You got all kinds of room. No, we don't. We don't, because the prairie provinces grow food, and the big cities are where people live. There's no room. There's no room in these cities. They're already too full, and no one wants to live in the Arctic Circle. So if you are pro-immigration and you live in Canada, I'm sorry, I'm against you. It's already way too big for this little, it's a little sliver along the American border where you can live. It's already too full, and the people that live here are unable to live. So it's been a disaster. Who was the one that let in all these people? Both the governing parties, the Conservatives and the Liberals, have done it. And it was mostly to buy votes of immigrant communities. We're going to let more and more of your family in. And the country is really in bad shape because of it. So open borders theoretically sounds great, but in practice, unless you can go anywhere on the planet, just opening your own border is a mess. So building a wall, if you're in the United States, to keep out Central America, well, it's got problems because wildlife can't cross it, and everyone knows that smugglers will always buy their way in through corrupt officials. And no one say that the reason that Central America, where these refugees or immigrants are coming from, are screwed because the American companies that are there screw them so badly. United Fruit Company. But, these same corporations screw the American people inside their country, too. In the end, it's always a problem with capitalism. And to get rid of capitalism, it's impossible. You cannot uproot the capitalist that owns everything. I don't think you're going to see a Russian Revolution. I don't think that there's enough people that want to see capitalism go. There's too many people that are able to get by with the system, with all its flaws. So you're going to always have a 1% that owns everything and a prison population that serves them. That is Planet Earth, and I'm for Infinite Bob 99, Jacob Ing. Jacob B. Ing. I spell Ing, I-N-G, which is a Chinese last name. Sometimes it's spelled N-G, but I'm going N-G. So B. Ing is what I am. And I was going to tell you that Li is an interesting Chinese name, very common Chinese name. But Li is also a common Scottish name. So if Mr. Li shows up at your door, you don't know whether he's a Scot or someone from China. That's your lecture. I'm Harry Weaver.